I'm Emma Cousin, and I'm here in the studio in South East London with hospital rooms. And I'm going to do a workshop today kind of exploring an element of my work that involves drawing. So I'm a painter and a drawer, working with figures, working with the body, to explore ideas and wordplay, to think about communication and to kind of play out. I use the bodies to play out these ideas, to question our relationships to each other and how we kind of operate as bodies in space and together. So I'm going to start by just talking through some of the things we've got in front of us today. So you should have these materials, which will be some prompts, basically. Recently, I've been thinking about games a lot and kind of painting as a game and drawing as a game. So we're going to be thinking about this game of using games as a prompt to then use the drawing as a game in itself, which should become clear. We're going to look at this book specifically, which is a shape game book, where everyone starts with one shape and then they invent from there. That's a really good kind of way to think about what we're going to be doing. So we'll look at that in a bit. And then we've got this really nice pastel paper, which comes in different colours and means that you can choose anything, and the colour that we'll use on top of that will shift. It has a really lovely texture as well. So the colouring aspect of it should be really enjoyable and feel really nice. We've got this tracing paper, which is A3. I use loads of this, and we'll use as many of these as we want to, really, to overlay different drawing ideas on top of each other. We've got a ruler, some Tipp-Ex, which we may or may not use, some highlighter pens, but you can just use felt tip pens, a rubber if you need to, although I try not to rub things out, pencil, biro, or a Fineliner. And then the really juicy bit is the colouring pencils. So as many as you want. If you don't have many, you could just use the 3 primary colours. So that's just blue, red, and yellow, and then that's loads to work with. Because the other thing we're going to be thinking about is mixing colour with pencils, to think about it like a painting. So I hope that's everything so far. So to start with, the first thing that would be fun to do is just think about this idea of a shape and what we can do within that shape. So I'm going to start with the shape game shape, mainly because it also looks like a face. So for me, it's quite interesting to start with something to do with the body, almost always. So hopefully you can... So I'm just going to trace this shape. So the great thing about the tracing paper is you can just overlay. It doesn't matter if it's not super accurate, just sort of overlay kind of roundabout. And if you want to change this shape, you want to make it rounder or make it more face-like, that's totally fine as well. So you should have something that looks a bit like that. And from here, we're just going to see, imagining it's some kind of, for me, I immediately imagine it's the face. So the first thing we do might be to put a little eye in there, and it might be looking at us. And then this kind of looks like a jawline, like a sort of teeth. So we could put some teeth in there, which is quite fun. And then maybe the bottom jaw comes down, so it's the teeth down here. And then something like that. And then I might think about how this face can fit in, what might happen next. So thinking about what other faces might fit within this face. One nice way to do it is immediately turning around like that. So once we've turned this around, this looks a bit like a mouth, like an open mouth. So I'm going to join that like that. And then the nice thing also is that scale can be really played with. Oops, hopefully that doesn't happen. Your pencil breaks. So you can play with scale really easily. So now you can see we've got a nose. That's the mouth of the new figure here. And then again, you can play with the eyes and have quite a lot of fun with that. So you could put the eye over here, so maybe he's looking like all the way behind himself. You can give him wrinkles, you know, you can have quite a lot of fun with that because it's quite quick. And this idea of like creating bodies or creating heads alongside each other that then interplay, I guess, is, for me, it's how a lot of the things begin. If we want to just add one more, just so we've got these kind of shapes in play. Switch it over. So the nice thing about tracing paper is that it can go from any angle. So once you've switched it over, you have all these different possibilities of shapes, essentially. And you can also lay them on top of each other. So if you imagine we were to do another head here and start again with this shape, we can overlay them and overlay them. Which maybe I should just demonstrate quickly. So if we start off with, if we do the second layer, and then what we can do is overlay his face on top of the other faces. So we can work out maybe where he's going to fit. Like he could just pop in that little gap there, or he could fit in there maybe, so he goes on top like that. And to kind of make him stand out on top of there, you might want to get your, what's it called? Fine pen, your kind of more thick black pen. And we can put his face on top, because that's going to go over the top of the other faces and fit together like that. You might want to give him a little mouth. So that gives you some idea of like how these things start to fit together, these compositions. This is how I kind of build up the first idea, if you like. So I'm going to move those to one side. So thinking about the game specifically, one really nice one is this idea of guess who. I don't know if you played that as a kid, but this idea that, you know, you're guessing the faces by describing faces to each other, and you have to guess the character. So this idea of faces and characters, I've started here. Hopefully you can see this quite clearly-ish on this paper. So this started with just one face, which was this guy's face in the middle. He's got his ears here. I'm just going to go over it so you can see. He's got quite a lot of expression. This was taken directly from the Guess Who image. So you could choose one of these faces and draw it to start off with. And then we, from there, work out what happens next. So for the next element, here's two that I sort of did earlier in terms of these conjoining the faces. So I don't know if you can see that. That's one of them. And that's this other kind of fitting together of the face. And then the last element really with this, bringing it all together, would be to colour in the bodies, colour in these intersections. So that's sort of an example of Twister, thinking about these twisted bodies coming together with these coloured elements. But let's stick with these faces. And I might actually just use primaries because it's more straightforward. So thinking about now, if we're coming together, mixing also with that coming together. So bringing together the red, maybe on the nose, because the nose is the point where they're kind of intersecting. So I'm going to bring basic colour in. And you can really enjoy this aspect of it. Like colouring's really nice. It feels nice. There's not really any rules. Obviously try and stay in the line, but it doesn't really matter. So thinking about maybe temperature as well, like if you've got a red nose, it might be hot. Maybe it's also cold weather. So thinking about the kind of different elements of colour, what that tells us as well. Like that, for instance. And then where it meets, what's a nice thing to do is sort of bleed slightly. So just go over the edge slightly where it meets the other face. And that way we can mix these two faces. So what I mean by mix is Now I'm going to do yellow, which is going to be the one in the front. And we just mix these two faces on top of each other. And you can see we've got a really nice kind of orange happening. And then we can build it into yellow. And again, I'm kind of playing with weight here, so sometimes pushing really hard, sometimes keeping it quite light. And then the blue could put behind that. So again, just bleeding slightly because that chin would meet his chin. We're just gonna carry that yellow across a little bit. And what's nice with yellow is it's a light colour. It kind of tells us about light as well. Whereas if we overlay this blue, it's going to be a shadow. So we can also think about it in those terms. And you can pull the colours into that, so we can have maybe the cheek is also a bit red, and it's coming down like that, and then maybe this forehead is very yellow, just to give it a sense of flatness. So you can kind of get the gist, hopefully, from that, just how quickly we can build these faces up together. And the very last thing, if you want to, that you definitely don't have to, you can take either the biro or the Fineliner. Really having trouble saying that for the Fineliner. You can go over the pencil line just to bring back the faces in definition, if you like. So that's going to re-outline those shapes so that we can see this idea of faces. And the game that started this, just to go back to the games, is this idea of connect four. So there's only 3 noses, so we'd have to have a fourth one. But that's basically the beginning of what you can do. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us. This has been Emma Cousin for Hospital Rooms Digital Workshops. Thank you.